I typically will always tell them that, I'm a nurse, I've been there, done that. But it's almost like you can instantly hear the relief and the sigh, because they get it. They understand that I've been there, that I've done that. I know what they're looking for. I know how important a great manager and a great team and flexibility and support is. I know because I've been there and done that.
Welcome to Nursing Beyond the Bedside. I'm Audrey, your host, and a nurse who pivoted my path several years ago. After 8 years as a critical care nurse, I was ready for change. I craved higher pay and more flexibility, but was struggling to find a clear path forward. Fast forward through positions in recruiting, customer success, and marketing, and many lessons learned along the way. Today, I run Pivot Path, a company dedicated to empowering nurses to redefine their careers. This podcast is designed to help you navigate the journey from clinical bedside nursing to a fulfilling career that aligns with your passions and goals. Here, you'll discover inspiring stories from nurses who've gone beyond the bedside, successfully transitioning to non-clinical roles, or redefining their nursing career. Join us as we hear their stories and share actionable strategies to help you make your own leap. Whether you're a new listener curious about what lies beyond the bedside, or a returning audience member in need of some fresh motivation, this podcast is your go-to resource for exploring new opportunities that can transform your career. Let's get started. For today's episode, we're joined by Chelsea Kaiser, a registered nurse with an 18-year journey that's most recently taken her from fertility clinic navigation to a fulfilling remote career in nurse recruitment. As a mom, cancer survivor, and fertility warrior herself, Chelsea brings unique insight into prioritizing family while building a meaningful career beyond traditional nursing. We'll explore how an unexpected opportunity opened the door to a flexible remote role that lets her work from her farmhouse office, and how she now helps other nurses navigate their own careers. Her story is perfect for any nurse wondering if they can find flexibility, purpose, and growth away from the bedside. Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, I am super excited to share your story because it starts kind of from your own very personal journey. So I would love for you to jump in and just kind of tell us about your path before nursing that led you into nursing and what ultimately led you into becoming a fertility clinic navigator.
Yeah, awesome. So I have to kind of go back until I was 19 years old. I was taking my pre-nursing classes. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and going through that process, I knew when I became a nurse, I did not want anything to do with HEMOC. It was too close to home. I knew that mentally and emotionally I could not do it. And so fast forward, I get through my chemotherapy, my radiation, I graduate nursing school. I go to start looking for nursing jobs. And I had a recruiter who, I guess she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I was more interested in labor delivery, mother baby, something, more exciting. And she said, well, I have this HEMOC position available. I really want you to go and tour the unit, meet the manager, meet the team. I just really think you're going to love it. And I was like, no, that is not what I'm interested in. I don't want to do that. And I just remember her saying, like, please just go. If you don't like it, then we'll look for other opportunities. But I really think you're just going to love it. Well, I went and I loved it. I fell in love with the unit, with the nurse manager. And it really just, I think it kind of saved me in a way, because I was really able to use my journey as a oncology patient now as an oncology nurse. And I stayed in the HEMOC world. I did inpatient HEMOC, and then I went to outpatient HEMOC, and I stayed there for 10 years. And it was very, very rewarding. But over time, I had gotten married and was kind of ready to start a family of my own. My patients kept getting younger and younger that were coming into the infusion center. And it really started to weigh in on my mental and emotional health, just seeing these young patients come in. And so I knew at that point in time that I needed to change in patient population. I needed to kind of do something new. And so I knew from my oncology diagnosis that there was a chance that my fertility could have been impacted. And so I knew after trying for about a year that my husband and I, we needed to have further assessment done, further evaluation to kind of figure out if my chemotherapy had impacted my fertility. And so when we went to our first visit at the fertility clinic, it was almost like I just knew I needed to be there as a nurse as well. And early on within my first couple of visits with the provider, I asked the provider, I'm like, do y'all need a nurse? Not thinking really anything of it. But at the time, there was only one nurse in the fertility clinic and they were busy. And so months passed and she was like, I'll talk to the nurse manager and see if we need any help. And so husband and I, we started our fertility journey. Thankfully, other than like a lower ovarian reserve, which is our egg number, I had a lower number because of my chemo. The issue was actually, unfortunately, with my husband, he had a lower sperm motility. And so we struggled with probably a year and a half of fertility. We did multiple timed intercourse cycles. We had 6 failed IUI cycles and we had a failed IVF cycle. And then finally our second IVF cycle was successful and we got pregnant with our little girl Jade. So rewind probably, I think I'm about a month or 2 months away from coming back from maternity leave. And my phone rings and it is my fertility doctor, like her cell phone number. And I'm like, what in the world is she calling me for? This is weird. I have my IVF baby on my hip and I answer the phone and she's like, hey, Chelsea, I was just wondering if you were still interested in a job. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was so lost for words. And I was like, yes, of course. And so she said, well, can you come this week and meet with the providers? And I was like, yes, of course I can. So that's kind of how I became a fertility nurse, is I just kind of, was going through fertility and infertility myself. And that was one of my biggest things when I was looking for a change in my career from oncology, is I just knew that being a cancer survivor, I was able to give these patients something that they could relate to, because I had literally been there and done that. I'd sat in those chairs. I'd received the chemo. I had issues with my portacath. Like I knew everything that they were going through, side effects of chemo, just all the things. And so I was really struggling with how am I going to make a transition in my nursing career from HEMONC to something else that I can really feel like I'm making a difference in patients' lives. And so when I got the opportunity to become a fertility nurse, I just knew that is what I wanted to do, because I was able to now use all of my struggles to, again, sit there in front of my patients and say, hey, I've been there. I've done this. I know the ups and downs, the journey, the bumps in the road, just, the negative pregnancy test after negative pregnancy test. Like I get it. I've been there. I've done that. I cry with you. So I knew it was something I would feel very passionate about.
That's such a special thing to be able to bring to your nursing practice. I mean, you obviously had to go through very difficult things yourself in order to be in that position, but to be able to bring that amount of sympathy to your work and be able to share that experience with your patients is incredibly unique. There are lots of nurses who, we want to make an impact. We are very empathetic and we want to be there for our patients, but being able to say, I've been in those shoes. I do truly understand what you're going through is just a whole extra level of that patient connection. So it's pretty remarkable to me that you're able to do that a couple of times throughout your career.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. I always say that God definitely had my journey, my personal journey, help me through my professional career.
Mm-hmm. Well, so tell me a little bit more about what it was like actually working in that role in the fertility clinic. What were you doing day to day?
So the neat thing about the fertility clinic that I was in is it was a very small clinic. So there was only, 3 nurses. We literally did everything from answering calls, triaging, patients calling in. We needed to answer those questions, sending medications in. Patients would come in, they would get blood work done, then they would get their ultrasound, and then the nurse actually would be the one to consult the patient. So I would consult patients during their journey, review with them what their ultrasound would look like, and then once their blood work came in, we were able to review the bigger picture with the providers, and the providers would come up with a treatment plan, and then we were able to provide those instructions to the patients on what their next steps are. I was able to be circulatory and pre-op and post-op during egg retrievals. But there towards, I guess probably about after the first year of being at the fertility clinic, I started doing third-party coordination, which is anybody needing donor sperm, donor eggs, donor embryo, surrogacy. So I was able to work with those patients. And by the time you get those patients, they wanted to be pregnant like last year. And so they are kind of sometimes towards the end of their journey, and they're drained mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. They're just exhausted. And so I really found a lot of compassion just working with those patients and those families, and so seeing like success stories, and just, it was great. Like, I absolutely loved every part of being a fertility nurse. Just my patients, the people that I work with, became best friends with my coworkers. It was great.
Mm-hmm. And working in that small team environment is really special too. And I think that, you see small teams like in different settings within healthcare, whether it's in a clinic like yours or in like a rural emergency department or something like that. But the common thread there is that you do kind of get to do a lot of different things. You wear a lot of different hats, which I'm an ER nurse. I love that. I think that is a really like fun experience to be able to, work with that population from start to finish. And you also do get close with your coworkers. So it's really special that you were able to find that environment doing something that you were really passionate about, that was close to your heart. Tell me how that role changed for you when COVID hit.
Yeah, so COVID hit, and it definitely flipped everybody's world upside down, but especially for the fertility world, because we weren't considered a medical necessity. And so our clinic really kind of had to shut down for the most part, especially for in-person visits. So most of everything that I was doing now, I was doing from home for a while. So all of the patient calls and questions and sending in refills and things that patients could do without having to come into the office, we were allowing them to do. Here and there were a few times that we would be able to see patients in the office, but for the most part, people were just doing timed intercourse at home, because that's what, we were able to offer. But being able to be home and realize that most of all of my job that I was doing in the office, I could now do at home, was a big eye opener. At the time, my little girl, we were struggling with the daycare. She wasn't happy with the daycare. We were struggling. And so when I was able to not have the stress of, taking her to daycare, and that stress, or, with constant sicknesses that come with daycare and having to leave work and now I can stay home, it was just, seeing that work-life balance was just a huge eye-opener for me. It was less stress. It was, I realized how much I was missing out on my daughter's life. I really felt like Jade was going to be our one and done baby, since we had worked through so many things to get her. And so I just really felt guilty for missing out. And so just being able to have the opportunity to do my job from home and have that work-life balance, I was hooked. I mean, I was hooked.
I remember having a similar eye-opening experience when I took my own first remote role, because we as nurses were just so used to like going to work, clocking in, and like we don't leave that building for 8 to 12 to 13, 14 hours.
Yeah.
So, we're not running an errand for ourselves. We are not going to a doctor's appointment. We are having to like leave and take PTO if like a kid gets sick and needs to be picked up from daycare. So having that balance of like, I can, and the flexibility of remote roles like varies, but it sounds like you had some similar flexibility of like, if I need to, I can take my kids to school, I can pick them up from school, I can run an errand. Like, as long as my work is getting done at the end of the day, like, you've got that flexibility. You're not stuck in like, you're not captive in like one building for the full day. And you add like having a kid to that mix. And I mean, it is truly game changing.
Yeah. And especially when, like you were saying, like when your kid gets sick and then you have to call in. Well, in a small clinic, there's sometimes all three nurses weren't working. So it really it puts burden on the other nurse that's in the clinic. And I always felt super guilty of that. I've never wanted to leave, they were my staff, but they were my family. I never wanted to leave them short staffed, but you have to take care of your family as well. And so I struggled with that when I would have to leave and take off and leave them shorthanded. And so I think, working from home, I was thankful that I didn't have to do that. I didn't have that burden as well.
Yeah. And, I think you're also calling out something that nurses often struggle with, which is that pull between our commitment to our work and our coworkers and other things that are important to us in life, right? Like whether that is just our personal time or time with our families. And we are a very giving profession. And I think that a lot of times that pull to be like committed to our work and not leave our coworkers hanging and like feeling guilty with calling out, like I think that is very common. And you saw through this experience, you're like, okay, my daughter's at home. This time with her is precious. Like, yes, I need to work. I have this career that I'm passionate about, but also this is my child. This is my family. And she's growing up so fast.
Yeah.
So what happened then when COVID ended?
So when COVID ended and we went back into the clinic, I knew that I needed to take steps to a better work-life balance. So the first thing that I did was I talked to my managers about cutting down, because I was Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So the first thing that I did was I talked to my managers about cutting down to 4 days a week. And I talked to everybody that I was very open and honest about, I love this job. I love the people that I work with, but I have to do this for myself. I have to do this for my family. This is something that I need to do. And so I periodically would look for remote positions, and I had a family friend who was in nurse recruitment within our organization, and I had her looking out for me as well for remote positions. And I interviewed for a few places here and there, but nothing really felt right. And it wasn't until really, I think it was about 3 years later that the opportunity came for this current position that I'm in.
And so that's interesting to me that, you realized what was important to you and what you needed to prioritize for, right? And you started speaking up for that. And it was a while before it actually like came to fruition. And, that's unfortunately, often how it is, whether it's 6 months or 3 years, it's especially right now, like it's a competitive job market and you decide that you want something and it can be really hard to go through that process and search and wait. But, I think that whether it's through kind of what you're doing of just like putting it out there, what you were looking for and what was important to you, actively searching for jobs, or if you are networking, which in my mind is often essentially the same as just like you're putting out into the universe what you want and what you're looking for. Yeah. And that tends to open doors. So tell us about the door that opened for you and that next phone call you got.
Yeah. So about 3 years later, my family friend Haley, she gave me a call and said that she had talked to her VP about me and she wanted me to have a conversation with her, an interview with her because the recruiters were hiring some RNs now. We didn't have any RNs on our nurse recruitment team. So they were opening the door for a few RNs. And so when Haley told me that this was a recruitment job, I was like, no, like I'm not built for corporate. This is not me. That's not who I am. And I was just completely against it. I was like, there's no way. And so after we talked for a little bit, she was like, look, just have a conversation with her. Just let her call you and y'all just talk. And then if it's not what you're interested in, then I'll keep looking for you. So I was like, okay, well, the worst case scenario, I have a conversation with somebody. It's not the end of the world. So later that week, the VP called me and we literally just talked about life, my personal life, my professional life, kind of really what I'm talking about to you today. And I kind of told her how my life has evolved and how it has impacted my nursing career, kind of what all I've done. And she was like, I want to have you on our team. Please interview with us. And I mean, I was so nervous to do something like this because it was so out of my comfort zone. It wasn't anything that I had ever done. I thought that in my mind, when I was thinking about a remote position, I was still thinking about working with patients. So I never thought about this side of things. And so the more and more that we were talking, I realized it was kind of like I had an aha moment because I remembered way back when I graduated nursing school and I had met with that recruiter and that recruiter pushed me to go into HEMONC when I was like, heck no, I'm not doing HEMONC. That's not what I want. But it was like she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I was like, maybe this is a chance for me to be able to now help nurses in a way that I've been able to help patients, because ultimately at the end of the day, as a nurse, you just want to make a difference in somebody's life. And so I just really felt like this was a calling for me to now be able to help nurses in their journey and finding, the perfect job for them, even if it's not with me, but just, having somebody that they can reach out to for questions or concerns or whatever. And the VP, she's just so sweet. So it was hard to tell her no. And I was just hooked. I was like, okay, here goes nothing. Let's do it.
Yeah. And, you've hit on something that I think is really important and really common, which is when you thought about leaving bedside nursing, you were still thinking something to do with patient care. And I think that as nurses, that's kind of what we have in our head. That's kind of what we're told, or our options are, like, nursing means dealing with patients. And so when you think about remote jobs, nurses are often looking for like remote nursing jobs, which is often like telehealth, telephone triage, remote patient monitoring, like those types of things. And the reality is we can do a lot more than those things that have direct patient care. And there's kind of like a spectrum of like, yes, I can do these things that are like very closely connected to the patient. And like, that's great. But I think it's also so important to realize that we have skills and experiences that make us super valuable in all kinds of roles. And I love how you said, like, you have this experience, you had your own, once again, like one of your own lived experiences that you can now bring into this role, of having that recruiter kind of work with you. And I do think that having that nurse voice on the other side of like a recruiting call or conversation is so important, because you understand what it's like to work in these different environments. Like you understand like what types of personalities like might work well in different specialties versus not. So I think that it's really cool that you were able to find another role that's very different, but still allows you to like give back instead of to patients this time. It's more indirect, but now you're giving back directly to the nursing community, which I think is also super special.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like when I'm on the phone with nurses and I tell them, because I typically will always tell them that, I'm a nurse, I've been there, done that. But it's almost like you can instantly hear the relief and the sigh, because they get it. They understand that I've been there, that I've done that. I know what they're looking for. I know how important a great manager and a great team and flexibility and support is. Like, I know, because I've been there and done that. And so when I tell the candidates who are applying, I'm reaching out to them and I tell them that it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. And I also this has nothing against recruiters. I just feel like this is kind of an experience that it's been like traditionally. I feel like nurses generally enter a recruiting call a little bit on the defensive, because it's like, well, we know that recruiter, their job is to fill this specific position, right? And oftentimes, historically, that recruiter is not a nurse. And so they don't necessarily understand all of the nuances of these nursing roles that they're filling and the people that they're kind of pushing into these roles. So I think that your perspective is huge there. And just like you said that you can hear that sigh of relief, just like bringing down that wall. So it's like, oh, okay. Like I feel a lot less pressure in this conversation because this girl actually gets it.
Yeah. And a lot of times I will talk to nurses and they've applied for one position that I have, but the more I talk to them, I realize that maybe this unit is too busy. Maybe this is not really what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for this instead. And so just by being able to understand really what they're looking for and kind of does my unit match this, or do I need to reach out to another recruiter and just kind of help navigate that, I think is really important.
Totally. And I talk to a lot of nurses who, when they leave the bedside, they worry about leaving that sense of satisfaction that we often feel from that patient interaction. And it sounds like you're still getting a lot of satisfaction through this job, but in this sense, you're getting it through helping guide that nurse through important stages of their career instead of that direct patient interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also are fully remote now, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep, I'm fully remote.
Okay, so tell me how remote work has continued to impact your family life, and share with us kind of what that flexibility looks like day to day.
So it's definitely way less stress. I am able to if I need to get up early and work and start my day at 6:30, I can do that. If I need to start my day at 9 o'clock, I can do that. So it's just having so much flexibility and when and where and how I work has been a game changer. You think about when I was working in the clinic and I was working Monday through Friday, by the time you get home at the end of the day, and get dinner and bath done, you have, a few hours with your child. But then also on the weekends, you've got the laundry and the groceries and all the things. So then your weekends, they get filled up with, wife stuff and family stuff. And so you just don't get any time at all. And so just being able to be remote and, I can take Jade to school every morning. I can pick her up from school every day. I can, if I need to take an hour and go to the dentist or the doctors or whatever, like I can do that and I can just come back to my work. I'm able to, I have, work cell phone. So if somebody needs me, I have that availability to just pick up the phone and call them and talk to them. And I think the biggest thing is I am just able to kind of be an extension of a lot of my nurse managers. And so we just have that relationship that if they need something, then, I'm here, I'm willing to help. And so it's just really great. It's just, honestly, I just feel at peace.
Mm-hmm. That is something that I know a lot of nurses would love to feel rather than I remember just feeling kind of a sense of anxiety, like the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. I'm getting up, I'm getting out the door, I'm clocked in by 6:45 and, you're not getting home then until 8 p.m. And even working 3 days a week, I still felt that my days off, I was tired. They were catch-up days on the stuff that, I couldn't do on my work days. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, working from home, the balance there is just incredible. And the fact that you get that extra time with your daughter is so huge. I mean, I talk to nurses a lot who are sometimes worried about taking even just a small pay cut, going to a remote role. And it's well, I don't know what's more important. Yes, of course, your paycheck is important. We all want to max that out, however we can, but there's so much more that goes into making you feel happy, fulfilled, at peace, as you said, that it's what is that worth to you? Because in my book, that's worth a whole lot.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I feel even if the pay is not what you want it to be, you are never going to get time back. Time is something that you cannot replace. And so to me, that was my line in the sand, is that my time with my family was more important than a dollar amount. And, ultimately when you do work remote, you're saving in other ways. You're not paying gas and, the wear and tear on your vehicle and just different things like that. So, even though it maybe is not necessarily a dollar amount, you're just saving in a lot of other ways for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chelsea, what would you tell other nurses who are interested in exploring opportunities away from the bedside, but are maybe worried about leaving that clinical patient interaction?
I would definitely say to just trust the journey. It may take you 3 years to find that perfect position. It may take you 2 weeks, but just take that leap. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. Keep looking, if something doesn't feel right, don't take it just because it's remote, In worst case scenario, if you take a remote position and, you don't like it, you can go back to bedside. You can reach out to me. I'll find you a perfect position. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's totally worth it. Take the leap, trust the journey, trust yourself.
I think that's great advice. And as you said, and this comes up time and time again when I ask nurses on this podcast that question, everybody is worst case scenario is not that bad. You go back to a job that is stable, that you at least like parts of, you like parts of bedside work. So, going back to bedside is an option that is always there. So that's a pretty big safety net that we have in our careers that a lot of other professionals just don't have, that assurance of yeah, if this doesn't work out, I'll just go get a job at, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We are fortunate in that sense that we have that fallback option that is not a bad option.
Yeah, there's so many varieties of things that you can do, not just inpatient, but, the outpatient world. And yeah, there's just a million things that you can do as a nurse. So just don't limit yourself.
Totally. And what advice, do you have any tactical advice for nurses who are wanting more flexibility and looking for that change? Some things that they may be able to start doing to start, pursuing that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to have conversations with the management team that you're in currently to let them know, because you never know, they may be able to offer you something, in my case, it was 4 days a week. So I definitely would start having those conversations. And then, yeah, definitely putting it out there in the world. It's funny because during this whole process after COVID and I went back to work during that 3-month wait, my husband and I, we were remodeling our farmhouse, and I made one of our rooms in the farmhouse my office. And I was like, I'm going to have an in-home office. And it was just like, I put it out there, and literally the week that I moved in to our house was like my first week, in my new remote position. So, and just, keep looking. Indeed, LinkedIn, there's positions out there. You just have to look and network. If you're on TikTok, follow other nurses. There's just, there's endless resources out there to help you find the perfect position for you, for sure.
Absolutely. And, sometimes I feel like saying just put it out into the universe can sound a little bit woo-woo, but yeah. I read this. I'm of course not going to be able to quote it word for word, but I did read something on just manifestation that really stuck with me at one point. And basically the theory was that manifesting works because by believing something is possible, by believing that you can achieve something, you will subconsciously take actions to get yourself there that you wouldn't otherwise take if you didn't believe in your own mind that that outcome was achievable. So I do think that even though, it can sound a little bit woo-woo to say, put it out into the universe, I do think that there's something to that. So just kind of speaking into existence what you want, I think is a real thing. And so, looking back on your pivot, particularly your pivot from going from working in a clinical setting with patients and a population that you're really passionate about to working in a remote role where you're using a whole different set of skills. Is there anything that surprised you about that transition and just that whole experience?
Yeah, I would say definitely how easy the transition was and how quickly and smooth I was able to just kind of come into my role as a recruiter. I wasn't expecting to really succeed as quick as I did, but as I talk to nurses and let them know that, hey, I'm a nurse too, it's kind of it really does matter. And so I was very surprised how quickly I was able to catch on to the recruitment world. Of course, I'm learning new things every single day, but I was really surprised at that. And I think as long as you're passionate about whatever you're doing and you're dedicated and driven, you're going to succeed. We're nurses. That's in our blood. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important call out, because I think that as nurses working, if we've only ever worked bedside, we take some of our skills for granted because they're just things that are underlying that we have to be good at in order to get through the tasks that need to be done every day. But the things that make you a great recruiter, you're able to establish trust and build those relationships and communicate and really be empathetic to someone's situation. Those are things that just we're good at as nurses. We have to do that every single day when we walk into a patient room. So we have all of these soft skills that are really powerful that I think are just important for us to remember.
Yeah, exactly. Time management, multitasking, there's, communication with difficult people. We get it. We've been there. We've done that.
Absolutely. Well, Chelsea, any final words for advice for nurses considering, a new career path or even recruitment as a career path?
I would just say follow your heart, trust the journey. And, if you have any questions or concerns for me, I'm always willing to be, a point of contact for anybody, be a resource. It's worth it. Just do it.
If you'd like to contact Chelsea after today's show, you can reach her by email at chelsea.kaiser.1@gmail.com, or you can follow along on TikTok at It's Me, Chels Kaiser, or Instagram at The Chels Kaiser. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you were inspired by today's conversation, I hope you'll share this episode with someone who'd love it just as much as you did. If you're ready to pivot your path, sign up for my free newsletter at mypivotpath.com. Get non-bedside jobs delivered to your inbox every week. And if you have questions or just want to say hi, feel free to email me at audrey@mypivotpath.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time.